Congratulations, you have successfully inserted campaigns into Salesforce, and now you're ready to tackle managing the campaign member statuses. Anyone who's been around the Salesforce block a time or two will tell you how exasperating it is to work with the campaign member status object. So, on its surface, it looks kind of like a pick list. You go into the campaign, you see that sent and responded are the two native status values that are added anytime you create a new campaign, and you can pretty easily edit those unless you've already added a member. We're going to get to the timing piece. So for now, does it look like a pick list? Kind of. Does it work like a pick list? No. When you create a new status value or you see the sent and responded status values that are automatically created, each of these it acts like a related record and each of them is assigned its own ID. Okay, no big deal. But since each status value is technically a record related to its parent campaign, it's not linked in any other way to campaigns that it may share a name with, right? So if you have very consistent naming strategies on your campaigns, you have to be very careful not to add spaces or dashes or any kind of different punctuation in your campaign member status values. If you do, you're going to have a beast of a time trying to group in reporting or write any kind of automation based on those values. Another important thing to know about this object is that timing is everything. It is super important to make sure that you have all of your campaign member status values clean and ready to go before you add any campaign members to your campaigns. Because, as you can see on the screen here, if you try to rename a campaign member status value and you have one or more members already associated to that status, you cannot edit it. So it's not like a pick list in that you cannot edit the naming of that. You cannot relabel it if there are people associated to it. You would have to um, change the status on all of those people so that that status is no longer assigned to a single member of that campaign before you could relabel it or delete it. So that's why we're doing this particular lesson, the campaign member status cleanup, immediately after we insert our campaigns, but before we would associate any campaign members to our campaigns. Out of the box in Salesforce, anytime you create a new campaign, two campaign member statuses are created. One is called sent, and it's marked as the default. One is called responded, and it is marked as the responded value. Anytime you want to get a list of all of the campaign member status values that are in your org, you can go into the data loader and you can click the Show All Salesforce Objects box and then select the object called Campaign Member Status. When you export these, then you're able to get your full list, and then you can work with an insert, an update, or an upsert function in data loader to manage those cleaned up values. And that's what we're going to go through step by step in the next section here. In a situation where you're tasked with bringing in campaign status member values, either from an old Salesforce org when you're doing a Salesforce to Salesforce migration, or a similar database that stored their campaign member statuses in a similar way, what we need to do is an upsert. Well, that's the easiest way, in my opinion. So first, before we get into the data files, let's look at Salesforce. So on a campaign, out of the box, let's say that we were to create a brand new one. Let's call this test. We'll make it active. We hit save. And you'll notice that the campaign member statuses that are automatically created out of the box are sent as the default and responded as responded. Okay? So our campaign ID starts with 701. That's always the prefix there. And if you were to click the drop down beside a campaign member status and click edit, up here in this URL, if you were to double click the ID, 01Y. So this is how you would manually get to the campaign member status values. Okay? So sent, responded, and then to get into the individual status values, you could click edit and go there. Well, we don't want to go through and do that manually, like update these and then insert a new one based on the old org, because that would take forever. So step one is we want to very quickly get at all of the campaign member status value IDs. The fastest way to do that is be logged into our new Salesforce org, click on Export, Show All Salesforce Objects. We're going to go to Campaign Member Status, and we're going to put this into a folder where we know where to find it. Click Next, select all fields, Finish, and then I'm going to pull over here. Here's the file that we just created. Let me make this a little bigger. Okay. Inside this file, we have the campaign that the status is related to. We have the ID, remember the 01Y that we were looking at? We have the ID of the campaign member status value. So if we go back here and we want to find for campaign test 3, the responded ID, let's click Edit, grab this value, and then if we were to search inside of this file, we could see that this ID corresponds here. Okay? So now this is just confirming that we understand how these IDs are associated. Each campaign can have many related campaign member status values. So now that we have an idea of what we need to update, what do we want to update it with? So this is where we would have our source org information. So if you're doing Salesforce to Salesforce, this would be the export from your data backup that contains all of the campaign member status values from that source org. And I've done some color coding here to try and explain it a little more clearly. Starting with our legacy campaign ID. We have inserted the new campaigns already, right? So that has to be done before we can add campaign member status values. So I did a VLOOKUP to say, I want to know what the new campaign ID is compared to the old one that corresponds to the old campaign ID. Then I want to know what is the set of labels, the status labels that I want to see, which one of those labels is the default, which one is marked as, or ones have been marked as has responded, and ideally what's the sort order, right? So again, this is my source org file. So you can see that these are the original, the source org IDs for those campaign member statuses. So how do I get this information? Because think about it logically in that the campaign in Salesforce, when we create it, has sent and responded, right? This would be sent and this would be responded, and we want sent to be overwritten to invited and responded to be overwritten with RSVP yes, and we want to insert a brand new status related to that campaign with the label of RSVP no. Get it? Update, update, insert. But how did I get these new campaign member status IDs from into this file of the old org status IDs? So we're going to create a key. So we have to have something that is in both of these files in order to be able to do that easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the new campaign ID and I want to know what the status ID is of the member. The member status ID for this campaign in the first sort order. Okay? Over here, this is a list of all of the campaign member statuses that were automatically created when I inserted those campaigns. I want to grab this ID and overwrite it with the the value from my old org. So I'm going to take that new org campaign ID and I want to grab the sort order. I'm going to put that here and I'm going to create a key. So let's call this key, and I'm going to use the concatenate function. Grab this, hit done. Now what we've done is we've created a unique key. I want the campaign ID, I want the value in the sort order, and ultimately I'm going to use that to be able to bring this ID into that old sheet. Okay? So let's copy and paste our values, and we're going to create that same key over here. We've got our new campaign ID and our sort order, and let's create our key. So again, we're going to use the concatenate function. Grab our sort order. All right. Now that we have a key that links the two files together, essentially I'm replacing this. I'm showing you how I got the new org's campaign member status ID here. So to make my life easiest, I'm going to go back over into this file, and I want that campaign member status ID, this information. I'm going to put it over here to the right of my key. Okay, so I'm going to do a VLOOKUP, and I'm going to start by saying, hey, go look into this other file and find this value. Well, where am I looking in the other file? I'm looking at the key, and I want to bring in to this other worksheet the value in the field to the right. So this is my array. I'm going to go back over here, finish out my VLOOKUP, and now you can see what I've done is into my set of the old org campaign member status values, I have now brought in the values corresponding to these campaigns, right? I know I want to update this record, right? And I want to update it with the label inside of here. So let's copy one of these and put it into our Salesforce org. I'm going to cancel out of this. Anytime you have an ID, just paste it to the right of the force.com/ and you can go right into that record. So you can see that this is the campaign member status value of sent. And let's go to our new campaign and go at it from this direction too. You can see here we have sent and responded, right? And I'm going to click the edit by sent. And up here I can see that this ID matches this ID that I have pasted in. See how they're the same? So I'm going to type the word ID into this file because now I know that I want to update this label with invited. I want to update this campaign member status label with RSVP yes. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this old one and save. And I'm also going to get rid of my NAs here. So let's go to our find and replace. Replace those with blank. And I'm going to rename this new campaign ID. I'm just going to take that new word out so that I can more easily map my fields in. I'm going to keep my key in here, but I don't need to map it. And I'm doing an upsert on the campaign member status object. So I'm going to update any records that have an ID, and I'm going to insert a new status value anywhere that there's not an ID. That's how Upsert works. And then if I have any blank columns to the right, I'm going to delete those. Okay, so let's have a campaign ready that we can look at after this is completed. So let me go here into Salesforce. I'm going to go into this campaign record. You can see right now that this campaign ID has sent and responded. We're going to go into our data loader. We're logged into the new org. We're going to perform an upsert. And then we have to show all Salesforce objects. Go to campaign member status. We want to use this file called campaign member status extract. It's not a beautiful name, I get that. Click next. And then where it says select the field for matching on campaign member status, we're going to use the ID field on that object. It's the only field that we have access to that we can use for an upsert on this object. When we get to our mapping, we are going to auto match. And here's what I want to call attention to here. Because we took the time to rename the one field from new campaign ID to campaign ID, it automatically mapped. Same with sort order. You'll notice that we are using the ID field in our upsert, and we want to map label is default and has responded, and we don't care about this ID from the source org. When we hit OK and we hit next, let's make sure that we have a logical place that we want to put this error and success file into. And then hit finish. And we have 9 successful upserts and 0 errors. So let's take a look at Salesforce and let's do a refresh on this first campaign that was in our list. We can now see that we no longer have sent, we have invited in the default. We have RSVP yes as our responded, and we have RSVP no. So we have all 3 of these values loaded in exactly as we expected it to inside of our data set. If we wanted to go into our success and error file, we can also take a look at the new IDs that were loaded as part of the upsert, right? So we already had information in our own ID field, right? These were the 2 we had. This one is blank. It being the data loader, it added a new column with the newly created ID as part of this upsert function. Now that we've cleaned up our campaign member statuses, we are ready to create campaign members from our lead success file.